Thank you for coming to lunch. There's more up here. Seconds are more than welcome. Grab all you can or all you want. I think we've probably got plenty. And I'm going to talk just a couple minutes here, and then we'll turn it over to Grover. Before I introduce him, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about M.P.I. If I didn't come up here and give you a sales pitch, you'd be very disappointed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. First of all, how many people had heard of Montana Policy Institute before this event, before you got a flyer or something? Oh, wow. Well, we did better than I thought. Okay, good. Yeah, we're a policy research center, basically a think tank, kind of like what Terry showed up there, pretty much. We opened for business in January 2008, so we're fairly new. And our goal is to be the premier policy research center, which is pretty easy because we're about the only one from our perspective that's focused on state issues. Premier policy research center that's dedicated to giving Montanans the tools they need to argue for policies that respect individual freedom, that expect individual responsibility, and that see government as an avenue of last resort rather than an avenue of first resort for fixing what ails us, whether it's on a personal level or a policy level or whatever. Our focus is on primarily right now on government accountability and transparency. That's why we're having this session. A couple aspects to that. One is tax and budget reform. You heard Barry talk this morning primarily about objectives-based or performance-based budgeting. We'd like to see budgets that are based on something more than last session's budget, plus whatever you can add to it. And tax policies that are based on economic growth and fairness, while still funding the legitimate roles of government that are out there at the state and local levels. Our primary thrust is on transparency, government transparency, making government information accessible and available. And there's a big difference between accessible and available. Let me give you an example. We're gathering data for another website that we're putting together on school spending. We sent out letters to every school district in the state saying this is the data that we need from you because it's not available anywhere else other than the Montana Education Association, and they've politely declined to give it to us. So we've gone out there and we've gotten a great response as far as volume, but not in data, and the responses vary from forget it, which we'll deal with, all the way up to here it is on a silver platter, great idea, and everything in between you can imagine. Most of the responses that don't have the data we're getting indicate to me just a lack of fundamental understanding of our public access laws, or they have to do with manpower shortages and things like that. I got a sweet call from a gal who has 4 people in her school district, and she said, you know, I'm really not going to get, I got a bunch of reports to do, I'm really not going to get to this in 10 days. That's fine. You know, we'll work with, you know, you got your 4 students, take care of them first, get your reports off, and then we can work on getting us what we need. We're not really ready for it yet anyway. So anyway, making government information accessible and available with search tools, visualization tools, think Google for government, as Sandra discussed and talked about and gave some good examples of. And not in bureaucracy speak, but in plain English, things that people can understand sitting at their kitchen table. Future areas we will be getting into are education reform, healthcare reform, economic development, the business climate in Montana. I think there's a lot of room for us to do some research there and figure out why we're not performing it economically to the level that we should be, that the surrounding states around us for the most part are. We'll be getting into that, but it all comes down to resources, and this is the pitch part. We're getting out, more people are knowing us, but if we're going to get people to work on these issues and put out reports and put on forums like this, we need membership. I've made it just kind of a personal goal to cover our operating costs with Montana contributions. We can get grants from national foundations that are sharing some of our goals for our policy, for our projects, but I would really like to cover M.P.I.'s operating expenses with Montana money just as a matter of principle. So we're reaching out and trying to do that. MontanaPolicy.org, www.montanapolicy.org tells you all about us and what we're doing. We're trying to make that a user community. We're updating it daily. We're trying to get people to go there every day, look at the news, look at the blogs, see what's going on from our perspective. And of course, the one we introduced this morning is bigskysearch.info. Please go to that. Please look at the tools. Look at the information that's on there. We'll be working with that. There's also quick ways to contact your legislators and state leaders and say, hey, we're behind this. You should be working for it. Give them the cover they need. They want to do the right thing, but they've got priorities and they've got the resource limitations too. Make them know that it's an important thing and give them the ability to go to their peers and say, my constituents really want this. Not just the Republicans, Democrats too. That's one issue that can be truly bipartisan. So please take a look at those. All right, so here's why we're here for lunch, other than the great food, is we're going to listen to Grover Norquist. Grover's a native of Massachusetts. He's been one of Washington's most effective issues management strategists for over 2 decades. President of Americans for Tax Reform. He's also supporting this conference significantly. It's a coalition of taxpayer groups, individuals, businesses opposed to higher taxes at both federal, state, and local levels. You may know them from their taxpayer pledge, no new taxes pledge, or taxpayer protection pledge. They've been signed from all over the place. Can't hear me? Need to talk louder? I'll stop looking down. How's that? I'll use my teleprompter here. Yeah, that works pretty well. All right, anyway, today 193 House members, 41 senators, 7 governors, over 1,200 state legislators have taken that no new tax pledge, which is a great accomplishment. Henry Kriegel here runs Montana's for tax reform, and he has quite a few signatures in the state. How many? Top of your head with your mouth full.
18 plus 11 incumbents.
Okay.
29.
29. Good number. Grover's the author of the book, Leave Us Alone, Getting Government's Hands Off Our Money, Our Guns, and Our Lives. He also serves on several boards, including the National Rifle Association, as a contributing editor to American Spectator magazine. Grover holds a master's degree in business administration, a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics, both from Harvard University, Harvard. He and his wife, I'm sorry if I mispronounced this, Sama, live in Washington, D.C. Let's please welcome, join me in welcoming Grover Norquist.
Carl, thank you very much. Passed out some paper at each table. Always important to have handouts. Sonny Bono. Actually, as Carl pointed out, I'm originally from Massachusetts. When I was young, my parents emigrated to the United States, and we decided to stay. I want to talk about sort of where we go from here, and both in Montana and nationally. There are 2 competing coalitions in the United States. In Europe, some countries, if you got 1 or 2% of the vote, you might decide who the prime minister is, and you'd be very important. In the United States, if you get 1 or 2% of the vote, you're officially a nut. And you may get a radio talk show, but you don't get to be a congressman, a senator, or a state legislator, or president. And so competing interests go into 1 of 2 coalitions. Our coalition, the center-right, those of us who would like more limited government, the good guys, if you wonder sort of why people show up to vote for you and your allies, think about the center-right meeting around a table. Everybody's there because on the issue that moves their vote, the issue that's most important to them, they want one thing from the central government, and that's to be left alone. Taxpayers, don't raise my taxes. Businessmen and women, don't regulate and tax my business. Now, there are businesses that want government subsidies or want the government to kneecap their competitors. They bat for the other team. The Second Amendment community, I serve on the board of directors of the National Rifle Association. Again, we don't go around asking for gun stamps. The NRA does not insist that every 4th grade child in Montana be taught a book entitled Heather Has 2 Hunters. All we want is to be left alone. You don't have to appreciate us or tell us how swell we are. If we're gun owners, just leave us alone. Homeschoolers, an increasing group in the United States, again, are not asking, they don't go knocking on other people's doors telling them to be homeschoolers. They simply wish to be left alone. There's some conversations earlier about differences between traditional values conservatives and economic conservatives. Traditional values conservatives, the religious right, the most important thing in their life is practicing their faith and raising their children. And they don't want the government interfering in their ability to raise their children. They wish to be left alone with their faith and left alone with their children, which allows, in the center right, evangelical Protestants,